Economics has affected our daily lives in both obvious and subtle ways. From an individual perspective, economics framework makes us choose between choices about work, leisure, consumption, and how much to save. Our lives are also influenced by macroeconomic trends such as inflation, interest rates, and economic growth. Economics is classified as a social science along with sociology, psychology, and political science. Social sciences attempt to apply the methods of science to analyzing and explaining human behavior. When defining economics as a subject, two aspects must be considered. Firstly, the subject matter of economics, and secondly, the methodology employed. To elaborate more, 5 fundamental questions have come to mind that need to be explained in detail. An interest in economic thought can be traced back to the poets and philosophers of ancient Greece. However, it was not until the 18th century that the first detailed attempt to understand economic behavior emerged in Europe out of what was called political philosophy, with Scottish philosopher Adam Smith, widely acknowledged as the founding father of economics. By the early 20th century, the social sciences had become distinct subjects, with economics emerging as a separate and increasingly popular and influential subject. In terms of methodology, economics attempts to observe and explain economic interactions and systems through the application of scientific methods. Pure sciences applies a method based on observation, creating a hypothesis, gathering data from the field or through experiments, testing the hypothesis, and then supporting or rejecting the hypothesis. As a social science, economics adopts the same approach but is limited in the extent to which it can replicate all the methods of pure science. Without the presence of the reasoning method, the resources founded cannot be effectively applied in solving any problems. There are 2 methods that can be used in analyzing economics, which are deductive and inductive methods. These 2 methods of reasoning can help us to become more understanding about this world. So, what are the differences between these 2 methods? Under the deductive method, Francis Bacon has named the process as a descending or top-down process. This is because the reasoning begins from the general assumptions or theory towards the specific conclusions. It can be understood that the specific conclusions derive from the general truth. For example, every business creates a social media marketing plan focusing on the Gen Z segment, which is specific conclusions, since social media is the easiest way to approach Gen Z, which is the general assumptions. There are 4 steps involved in the deductive reasoning process. Firstly, starting by identifying the problems. The problem can be under the issue of inflation, unemployment, economic growth, and others. Secondly, constructing assumptions. The economists will make more general assumptions to form the hypothesis. After that, the economists develop the hypothesis. Some of them would choose logical reasoning, including mathematical methods, for the hypothesis. Testing and validating the hypothesis is the last step in the logical process. From those results, they can see whether the hypothesis is consistent or not with the facts. If not, they need to modify the assumptions again. However, the way of inductive reasoning is opposite from the deductive reasoning, which Francis Bacon named it as an ascending process. The process starts from the individual problems and then forming a general principle. In other words, they make general conclusions based on the facts. The economists will collect a lot of observations, experiences, and experiments before making a general conclusion. For instance, based on the collected feedback from the employee survey, it helps the government to create a new wellness program for the employee. There are 4 steps involved in the inductive reasoning process, which are: in order to draw conclusions about an economic phenomenon as a whole, the problem must be carefully chosen and formulated. Then the process continues by gathering, listing, categorizing, and analyzing data using acceptable statistical methods constitutes the second step. Third, data is utilized to draw conclusions about specific details pertaining to the issue. Lastly, the economists establish a general truth from the specific facts. Nevertheless, these 2 methods complement each other with which makes the process of decision-making about this complexity of economics becomes easier than before. By utilizing sources and methods of reasoning in modern economics, it could assist in improving design, implementation, and assessment of social programs and schemes, and thereby contribute to societal outcomes or effectiveness of social policies. The intent is not to suggest only economic aspects of social policies. The argument is that economic reasoning integrated in the overall analysis can help improve social policy design, implementation, and outcomes. A key difference in the economic and non-economic way of thinking is that the latter is more prone to approach choices through yes or no spectrum, while economic reasoning focuses on the margin, bit more of this, bit less of that. Such a method of reasoning makes the necessity for trade-offs an integral part of the reasoning process. From such reasoning, it follows that it is not monetary amount spent, but the relationship between monetary and other inputs and outputs obtained, which in turn impact on societal outcomes obtained from such spending, that should be the main focus of social policy analysis and discussions. This makes the analysis inherently more conservative and perhaps less exciting. These characteristics, however, accentuate the relevance of economic reasoning for social policy. There are some examples of broad areas where economic reasoning could assist in the analysis of social policies and help achieve societal outcomes from social sector outlined. Firstly, focusing on societal welfare suggests that impact of both market and non-market activities on household welfare be taken into account in assessing the impact of social policies. Household welfare depends on expenditure needs as well as on income available. Social policies on health or home ownership or on lifelong skills development could impact on both reduced need for expenditure and potential generation of income. Social policy is an inclusive disciplinary, which means providing solutions to address needs of social life. Social problems change based on economic and environmental factors. These changes also differ based on social structure and state policies. It is seen that traditional methods were used to satisfy social needs, and the groups in need of protection were tried to be protected through social aid and services in the pre-industrial period. A social policy analysis, such as for healthcare or for housing or education, or evaluating a subsidy program or compliance with tax, labor, environment, and other rules and regulations, which incorporates only budgetary costs based on government cash accounting method and out-pocket costs of the beneficiaries, is unlikely to be able to fully enumerate economic costs, such as total value of all economic resources used in a given activity, including opportunity costs. Understanding of full economic costing would improve many social policy schemes and programs. To sum up, the main goal of social policies is to ensure that everyone in society lives in harmony afar from conflicts. Thus, the target is to ensure social justice, social development, social balance, social integration, and social peace. The second impact is the framework for fiscal policy. Fiscal policy has played an important role in driving the nation's economic recovery towards achieving the pre-pandemic levels. Swift and bold policy, which includes financing for extensive vaccination programs and implementing immediate measures to ease the burden of people and businesses, have enabled the government to mitigate the impact of the pandemic effectively. For example, the pandemic has affected public finances and derailed the government's fiscal consolidation from the original trajectory due to the implementation of stimulus packages and economic recovery plan, which led to a higher spending and revenue foregone. Consequently, the budget deficit and government debt have increased significantly since 2020, which necessitates a holistic fiscal reform in the medium term. Although the reform is vital to achieve sustainable public finances, the government will not prematurely withdraw the fiscal support, as the action could undermine the post-pandemic economic recovery. The main objectives of fiscal reform are to broaden the revenue base, improve spending efficiency, and enhance transparency in fiscal management. Immediate reform measures such as reviewing the tax framework and implementing more targeted subsidies, are estimated to surge to RM285.2 billion or 60.7% of GDP, an increase of 21.9% from budget estimates, mainly from tax and non-tax revenue. The increase in tax revenue is expected to be mainly derived from prosperity tax, special voluntary disclosure program, and commodity-related tax, while non-tax revenue mainly from additional dividend from Petronas of RM25 billion. In providing sufficient fiscal support to protect the citizens and businesses from the rising inflation and cost of living, the total government expenditure is expected to expand by 16% to RM385.3 billion as compared to the budget estimates of RM332.1 billion. The operating expenditure is expected to increase by RM51.2 billion or 21.9% to RM284.7 billion, of which RM58.9 billion is allocated for subsidies and social assistance. Overall, the government has the responsibility to ensure an effective and efficient fiscal framework to enhance the credibility of fiscal policy while maintaining macroeconomic stability and safeguarding the well-being of the citizens. There is a close relationship between the sources and methods of reasoning used in modern economics with the SDGs, especially SDG number 8, decent work and economic growth that promotes sustained, inclusive and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. This is because they have the same purpose and objectives, which is to solve economic problems and achieve stable economic growth. Stable economic growth implies an increase in production and services over a period of time and is usually measured by gross domestic product (GDP). An increase in production and services will cause firms to increase their workforce and create job opportunities that lead to lower unemployment rates. When people are employed, they will increase their purchasing power. Therefore, it can be said that economic growth increases employment and adds to a lower unemployment rate, which helps to alleviate income inequality and poverty while enhancing food security and community lifestyle. Furthermore, increase in economic growth and employment leads to increase in tax revenue that can be used for government expenditure and therefore makes it possible for the government to spend more on key public services such as health and education. It is a strategic planning that improves social welfare while improving employment-based contributions and productivity on a long-term basis. As social welfare increases, people's lifestyles and their participation in the economy can also be improved, thus reducing poverty and hunger, which are SDG 1, now poverty, and SDG 2, and hunger and achieve food security. In addition, other than applying fiscal policy to secure social welfare by government expenditure, fiscal policy may be also implemented to safeguard land and water life, as outlined in SDG 14, Life Below Water, and SDG 15, Life on Land. This can be accomplished by the imposition of a fee or a tax. For example, a company that discharges garbage and pollutes a river may be fined a fee to offset the cost of lost recreational amenity and fish life. In conclusion, the sources and methods of reasoning used in modern economics are closely related to the SDG number 8, decent work and economic growth, as well as the SDG 1, now poverty, SDG 2, and hunger and achieve food security, SDG 14, life below water, and SDG 15, life on land, which are all interconnected. From the fiqh perspective, the fundamental idea used in the Holy Quran and Hadith is reason or aql. The ability to form judgments mentally is known as reasoning. These conclusions are communicated through arguments or assertions. Logic is the study area that deals with reasoning. The field of philosophy that deals with determining what is true and false, what is valid and what is invalid is called logic. The goal of logic is to identify fallacies in arguments, and logicians are responsible for rebutting them. We can only discern between good and wrong via reason. Allah created reason. Two traditions employ reason or aql to express its temperament. One is used in a way that is excellent for the Quran and Hadith as well as for jurisprudence. In this specific way, individual grounds are employed in a subjective manner, free from any other sources as an absolute truth that is separate from the Quran and Hadith. Conflicts about how the Quran and Hadith should be interpreted as well as opinions from those who follow the accepted path would result from this kind of inference. In conclusion, every Muslim should be balanced between worldly and hereafter matter. Whatever the methods that are being used in deciding facts, there is a distinct line that separates what is right and wrong. In order for us to achieve al-falah, we are obliged to use God's bounties to humans, including our aql, properly. What is the difference between humans and animals is the presence of aql. The reason why Allah gives aql to humans is to ensure the observance of maqasid shari'ah to protect life, religion, intellect, lineage, and wealth.